Did you know that a staggering $1 trillion is lost to corruption every year around the world? That's enough money to lift 700 million people out of extreme poverty. Yet, many corrupt politicians still walk free, with little to no consequences for their actions. This shocking reality raises an important question: why do they get away with it? In this video, we'll dive into the dark world of political corruption. We'll explore how powerful networks protect corrupt officials, the legal loopholes they exploit, and how they manipulate the media and public perception. You'll learn about strategies they use to stay in power, even when scandals erupt around them. From scandal fatigue that numbs public outrage to the cronyism that keeps them safe, we'll uncover the shocking truth behind how corruption thrives. Get ready to see the hidden tactics that allow these politicians to evade accountability. Trust us, you won't want to miss this eye-opening journey into the underbelly of politics. Chapter 1: The Silent Network. Behind the scenes power plays. Corrupt politicians don't work alone. They have an entire network of influential people protecting them. This network often includes business elites, lobbyists, and even other politicians. The truth is, corruption thrives in the shadows. The late political scientist Robert Klitgaard famously said, "Corruption equals monopoly plus discretion minus accountability." Politicians with unchecked power make deals behind closed doors. They know the public isn't watching every move. Take the example of Brazil's Operation Car Wash scandal. It exposed a vast network of corrupt politicians and business executives who were siphoning billions. Despite massive evidence, many key players walked away with little more than a slap on the wrist. Why? Because they were part of the silent network. These politicians often have access to insider knowledge, resources, and, most importantly, the right connections. It's not about being the smartest person in the room, it's about knowing the most influential one. They trade favors, make backdoor deals, and build relationships that will protect them when trouble arises. A 2018 study by Transparency International found that almost 60% of corruption cases involving high-level officials were dismissed without real consequences. Even when they're caught, they have a powerful safety net. Think of it like a spider web, tough to break and almost invisible. If one thread snaps, another is quickly spun to cover it up. That's why you rarely see powerful politicians facing serious jail time. Chapter 2: The Legal Loophole Factory. Building a shield of immunity. Politicians often escape justice through legal loopholes. These are cracks in the system that savvy politicians exploit to protect themselves. Laws are designed to be fair, but when corrupt individuals manipulate them, they become shields. Immunity laws, for example, exist to protect politicians from frivolous lawsuits, but in practice, they often serve as a get-out-of-jail-free card. In the US, a politician like Richard Nixon was famously quoted saying, "When the president does it, that means it is not illegal." This mindset showcases how high-level officials see themselves as untouchable. Immunity laws are common in many countries, protecting those in power from prosecution while they're in office. In fact, a study by the World Bank found that around 42% of corruption investigations globally fail due to such legal protections. One of the most notorious loophole tactics is delaying legal processes. Politicians have access to the best legal teams, and they know how to stretch cases for years. The longer the case drags on, the more likely people will forget or lose interest. Sometimes, politicians simply wait out their terms in office, knowing that their successors won't pursue the case. It's a tactic known as justice delayed, justice denied. Corrupt leaders also pass laws to protect themselves in the future. For example, in 2020, Israel's Knesset passed a law allowing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to remain in power despite facing multiple corruption charges. His legal team argued that the charges were politically motivated, another common defense used by corrupt politicians. These loopholes are carefully crafted to appear legitimate. They operate within the system but bend it beyond recognition. Politicians know how to use every angle to stay protected. The average person might not see it, but the legal system is often designed in their favor. Chapter 3: Media Puppetry. Controlling the narrative. Corrupt politicians know that controlling the narrative is half the battle. If they control what people hear, they can manipulate public perception. In the words of media theorist Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message. The media isn't just a tool, it shapes how people think about corruption. Politicians often have cozy relationships with media moguls. In countries like Italy, for instance, former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi owned several major TV channels. This allowed him to control what was aired about his own scandals. When a scandal breaks, they know how to divert attention. By using media to create distractions, they steer the public away from the real issues. A tactic called whataboutism is often used. When faced with accusations, they point to someone else's wrongdoing. Social media has made this even easier. Politicians can now bypass traditional media outlets and speak directly to their audience. Platforms like Twitter and Facebook give them a direct line to the public, often without the scrutiny of journalists. This creates an echo chamber, where their followers only hear what they want to hear. A 2019 study from the Pew Research Center found that 55% of US adults get their news from social media. This means politicians can control a huge portion of the narrative without ever being fact-checked. Fake news and misinformation also play a role. Politicians or their allies will spread misleading stories to confuse the public. By muddying the waters, they make it harder for people to know what's true. Once doubt is planted, it becomes much easier to get away with corruption. A famous quote by Joseph Goebbels, Nazi Germany's propaganda chief, sums this up: "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." Corrupt politicians have mastered this strategy. They know how to shape the story in their favor, using both traditional media and social platforms to manipulate what people see and hear. It's not about telling the truth, it's about controlling the conversation. If you find this information eye-opening, don't forget to subscribe for more insights into political corruption and how it affects our lives. Chapter 4: Public Apathy. When scandals become white noise, corrupt politicians often rely on a weary public to get away with their actions. The constant flood of scandals makes it easy for people to tune out. After a while, it all starts to feel like background noise. This is known as scandal fatigue. When one corruption case follows another, people become numb. A report by the World Bank noted that public engagement in anti-corruption movements dropped significantly after prolonged exposure to political scandals. Politicians know this, and they use it to their advantage. They can ride out the storm, knowing that after the initial outrage dies down, people will move on to the next big thing. For example, in Mexico, the La Estafa Maestra scandal revealed how public funds were embezzled on a massive scale. But despite public outrage, only a few were held accountable. People grew tired of hearing about it. Politicians count on this weariness. By the time investigations take place, most citizens have forgotten about the issue or lost interest. Social media accelerates this process. While it's a great tool for exposing corruption, it also speeds up the news cycle. Scandals come and go in the blink of an eye. A study by MIT found that false information spreads 70% faster than the truth on social platforms. So, when a scandal is exposed, it's quickly drowned out by other distractions, some of which are intentionally manufactured. Politicians also use strategic timing to release bad news. Releasing damaging information late on a Friday is a common tactic because people pay less attention to the news over the weekend. By Monday, something new will have taken over the headlines. This pattern of strategic distraction helps corrupt leaders minimize public backlash. The sad truth is that many corrupt politicians stay in power because the public has grown indifferent. As scandals blend into one another, politicians know they can wait out the outrage. Chapter 5: Cronies and Cover-ups. The power of political networks. Corrupt politicians rarely act alone. They have a network of cronies who help them cover their tracks. These are trusted insiders, advisors, businesspeople, and lobbyists, who share in the spoils of corruption. A study by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists revealed that nearly 75% of corruption cases involve some form of organized collusion. These networks operate like well-oiled machines. They ensure that key people stay loyal by offering benefits like lucrative contracts or political favors. It's a system of mutual protection. If one person gets caught, the others help cover for them. This is often called cronyism, where a small group of people protect each other's interests at the expense of everyone else. In South Africa, the infamous Gupta family used their close relationship with former President Jacob Zuma to secure billions in government contracts. This web of corruption was known as state capture, where a private family had more control over the government than the people did. Even when the scandal was exposed, the network was so powerful that it took years for any meaningful action to be taken. Politicians also use patsies, lower-level officials who take the fall to protect those higher up. This tactic ensures that the real masterminds remain untouched. In many cases, a mid-level bureaucrat will be sacrificed to calm public outrage, while the top-level politicians walk away unscathed. Cover-ups are also part of the strategy. These can range from destroying evidence to intimidating witnesses. In 2021, a report by Human Rights Watch detailed how governments in several countries silenced whistleblowers who tried to expose corruption. Corrupt politicians understand that staying in power means keeping the right people quiet. Networks of cronies act as a safety net, ensuring that even if a scandal is uncovered, those at the top remain protected. It's like a mafia, but instead of gangsters, it's politicians pulling the strings behind the scenes. If you found these insights shocking, don't forget to subscribe for more on the hidden mechanisms of political corruption and how they shape our world.